Climber, what can a songwriter manager do for you? And what exactly is there to manage for a songwriter anyway? Well, we're going to be bringing on a great guest today to talk about that on The Climb. Johnny, do your thing.
Welcome to The Climb! This is a show dedicated to helping singers, songwriters, and indie artists like you get leverage in the music business. That's what you're going to need to get ahead, whether you're an artist, whether you're a songwriter. Gone are the days when the big, fat corporate company plucked you out of obscurity and shined you up and turned you into a household name and a big star. No, you have to actually have proof of concept now. You got to have some momentum. You got to already have proof that your art has value in the marketplace. That's called leverage. That's what the new music business looks like, and that's why we called it The Climb, C.L.I.M.B, creating leverage in the music business. See what we did there? It was genius. That is a Baxter from my good friend and co-host, Mr. Brent Baxter, who's an award-winning hit songwriter with cuts by Alan Jackson, Randy Travis, Lady A, Joe Nichols, and more. Got a couple number ones in Southern Gospel recently, and that's not all. He helps songwriters like you turn pro by teaching you how to write like a pro, do business like a pro, and then the last piece of the puzzle gets you connected with the pro, with the relationships that you need to take that next step. You can find Brent very easily at songwritingpro.com. Once again, that's songwritingpro.com.
And I would like to introduce you to my co-host, Johnny Dwinell. Johnny owns Daredevil Production. They're breaking artists digitally by identifying new fans through data. If you're an artist looking to increase your streams, blow up your video views, sell more live show tickets, and get discovered by new fans, TV, and music industry pros, then Daredevil Production can help. Daredevil has worked with multi-platinum artists like Colin Ray, Tracie Lawrence, Ty Herndon, and Andy Griggs, just to name a few. You can find Johnny at daredevilproduction.com. That is production, singular, no S, and there's no S because there is no other. Johnny D.
What's up?
Hey,
We haven't done this in a while.
And it's also, it has been a while. It's also fun to watch the faces of our guest when you do the whole intro thing. Welcome to The Climb!
And they win. So
And
not
it's
sure what to do.
like, what is this?
I feel like when I tell that story about
fun.
the when I use the Axl Rose thing, and then I talk about on the kitchen table and you jump, like I feel like I'm that guy. Right? You're jumping up on your kitchen table, like, what's up? Welcome to The Climb! Everybody's just like,
Right. There's no live audience.
No, now you're scaring me.
Record this. Right. But I'm used to that energy from you, so it's all good.
You're frightening me. So good time in Denmark, man, with Nashville Nights International Songwriting Festival. It's the first show we've recorded since we've been back.
Mm-hmm.
That was absolutely incredible. And for the first time, we actually, the interviews that we did with those heavy hitters happened on stage as a ticketed event. The first year we did it, it was a media room, which was also super cool, but a little tricky to herd the cats because it was so off-site in the place that we were staying. But this was amazing, and the feedback that we've gotten on it from the songwriters and from Blue and from Stefan, who are the founders of the whole festival, is incredible. I mean, everybody's like, that was my favorite part. Like, so you know what? Shout out to us because I'm not too proud to
be your own hype man.
Yeah, be my own hype man. Shout out to us for like coming up with some cool questions. We went with, and we're going to be able to present these to The Climb on the podcast, guys, once we get the recordings. And we'll make that happen. But we went with cuts and bruises. We just asked them some different questions. Like, tell us about the story about like the coolest cut you had and what happened behind that. Like, how did you write it? Like, what were the 50,000 speed bumps that you had to navigate before it actually landed and you got a cut? And then tell us about the big song that you didn't get cut, you know? And there's some really, really good stories there. And I think it focused more on the human experience, wouldn't you say, of the writers, and it's not, you know,
not as much inside baseball as we would normally geek out on.
Yeah, which is, by the way, I mean, it's one thing to write a great song, and of course you're prideful of that, but man, you're also really prideful of all the crap you have to overcome to get that to the place where it's actually going to get a life and get to be heard. And that's like a whole nother story that's just equally as satisfying, I think, for anybody that can get that done, and inspiring. It's inspiring.
Yes. My personal was the very awkward moment when I'd ask a writer, so what's it like being married to a creative and their wife is in the audience?
Yeah.
And they'd be like, I don't
That's
want to
her.
answer, or she's right here and you just bring her up and ask her. So that was fun.
That's right, man. So anyway, so
Normally, when
it's
I'm with a big writer and it gets that awkward, it's because I throw out a bonehead title or idea. So this is
oh,
this
that's
is
funny.
a
Now,
fun,
this is a
different way to
different
be
way to
awkward.
feel awkward. It's a new way.
Exactly.
Inventing new ways to feel awkward.
Yes.
Right on. So I'm excited about today's show. We've got a songwriter manager. Like, what's that? I don't know. Like, my life has become very intertwined with this person, and so I'm excited to bring her on. But we're going to wait for that introduction. Let's take care of a little business first,
Yes.
and tell you to, follow or subscribe to the podcast, whatever platform that you happen to be listening to it on. Leave a rating and review. Tell a friend about it, because it's honest to God, you guys spend a lot of time with us. We see all the numbers, and you're doing it for a reason. You're getting something out of it. So tell another fellow musician, indie artist, songwriter, let them know, like, hey, there's some good stuff here, And we just had a song title challenge that we did this morning that Brent and I recorded this morning, and Brent got a whole heaping helping of job satisfaction from like a really big writer who was like, man, you were like my hero when I first came to town.
I
And
read
I
your
listened to all your
blog.
Man versus Row stuff. I read your blog and I use that stuff before I go into write. And like, they're fundamentals that he still uses to this day, which is just so great, to
I'm
hear
just
that.
glad I didn't ruin them. So
So help us, help you, help them, right? I mean, that's the
that's right.
gig. That's what we need you to do. And join the C.L.I.M.B community. It's facebook.com/groups/the C.L.I.M B community. Very easy. You got to ask to be let in. We let everybody in. We will roadhouse you out if you don't follow the 3 simple rules. Just be nice. Number 2, be nice. And number 3, put your stuff in the right place. Like, don't,
Mhm.
if it's not for everybody, don't put it in the feed. If it's about you, we want to hear about it. But we have very specific spots for you to put that so that everybody can shower you with love, affection, and validation. But
That's
if
right.
you put that in the wrong place, you get the opposite of love, affection, and validation. You get roadhouse. Okay. So it's
That's
just real
right.
simple. Because, by the way, that just tells us, like, you don't listen to the freaking podcast, man. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Because you would know by now that we protect that community with everything that we have. We'll cut a bitch. We don't care. Like, we'll do it. So one of those places that we have you put some content is New Heights, right? Which we
That's right.
affectionately call Wednesday Wins because it comes out on Wednesday.
Mhm.
So we have some new wins, and then I've got one to share too that I'm really excited about.
Oh, sweet. Well, okay, I'll keep this light. We have more than we have time to read, which is always fun. So, climber Tracie College Richardson, I'm sorry. Has a new single out. Well, this was a day or two ago, but by the time y'all hear this, it'll be a couple weeks. But she has a new single out. Excited to share this version of one of my favorite hymns, "Blessed Assurance." So she's on DistroKid. Tracie Richardson, Tracy Richardson. It's "Blessed Assurance." She's a sweetheart, and so that's cool for her. So new single out, which is fun. Let's see
Congratulations,
here.
Tracy.
Yes, climber Randy Maynor has he posted here after a minor delay, finally dropping this weekend. Warner artist Brandon Estellas EP Truthworks. We had an amazing writing team and very blessed. Brandon put his faith in us. So apparently he wrote on there with Jordan Burks, Bev Herrera, Donna Norton, some other folks. So he ended up with, like, I don't know, I think they had several cuts on this project on Warner. So the artist is Brandon Estellas and the climber is Randy Maynor. So way to
That's a
go,
major
y'all.
label
Keep
cut.
on climbing. Yeah. So Johnny, you have
That's
one too?
that's awesome. Yeah, man. We had a great weekend. Excuse me. We had a great weekend and a great week with my artist Josh Roy. So Josh came out last week this will be the first week in September. Again, this is going to drop in a couple weeks, but
Mm-hmm.
first week in September, we did a bunch of micro content, interview stuff that we're going to use to promote the record when it's coming out. And we did a proper photo shoot, his first proper photo shoot. It just came out fantastic.
Great.
Then we all left on Thursday early in the morning to go back to Arizona, where he's from. And I took an evening with the band to work on some live moments in their live show because they booked a gig opening up for Scotty McCreery up
Mhm.
in Payson, Arizona, at like a real big outdoor shindig. That was the 50th anniversary of a casino there. I think it's called Mazatal Casino, which is part of the Tonto Apache tribe casino. So it was a big deal out there, like 3,000 people. It was really cool. And we created these moments in rehearsal. And I don't know if y'all understand like how hard this is to do and how much balls you got to have to do this, because when you have a big show like that, it's usually the last place you want to be trying new stuff out, that you're not familiar with.
Yeah.
But they all did it, and it was awesome. I mean, he walked up on that stage and just looked like a star. And the entertainment company that put that whole thing on, from the production to the booking of the national artist, Scotty McCreery, to the booking of my artist and all that, just their jaws were on the floor. They were like, "You are phenomenal. Like, we love this. He got the crowd singing along, because that was one of the moments that we worked into the show the night
Mhm.
before. So he's got the crowd singing along with his song that they've never heard,
Yeah.
because he was just singing it to him live that day. So they're like, we do over 200 shows a year. We've got NASCAR shows coming up. We got a lot of stuff going on, and we really want to. Well, you're going to be hearing from us, So that was a
That's
big
awesome.
level up for him, and very, very exciting. It was a big win. I'm super proud of it. Yeah.
Very cool.
All right,
Johnny,
so
keep on
let's
climbing.
let's get to our guest. This is exciting because this is some weird stuff, man. To be honest with you, this is different. Like, you don't hear about this, and I just love everything that this person is doing. So, Tracie Hintz moved to Nashville in 2018 to start Hits in branding, so she could help people go after their dreams by building their personal and professional brands through storytelling. That sounds familiar. Are we
Mhm.
competitors? No, we're not. She worked with large brands like the NCAA and UNICEF. You might have heard of them, as well as small businesses that range from artists to nonprofits to a surf coach. I need to know that guy. Hits and her team created integrated marketing and branding plans for clients, including graphics, videos, websites, email campaigns, social media, digital media, PR, booking, content capture, event planning, sponsorship, sales, fundraising, merchandising, management, and more. That's everything, man. Her work with Tyler Tisdale on his first ever album release resulted in over 1.6 million streams and counting on Spotify. On the nonprofit side of things, Hits and her team work with the Circle of Sisterhood to raise the most money ever in the 10-year history of the organization. She also is a partner in the annual Nashville Nights International Songwriters Festival held in Denmark that started in 2021, and is the manager of two Grammy-nominated songwriters, Blue Foley and C.J. Field. She also, as an aside, worked with platinum a platinum songwriter, Chancey Neal, who's a friend of ours as well, who has been out on tour with Luke Bryan and is quite a big deal, and just had a baby. So we're super excited about that. Please
Aw.
welcome to the show, Tracie Hintz. Hi, Tracie.
Hey,
Hi, thanks
Tracie.
for having me, you guys.
Welcome
Feel
to
like
the
I should be
That's like
climb.
leaving.
1/3 of her freaking bio too. Like, she's got like all kinds of awards in there, and we just thought if we make it all about the bio, we're not going to have any time to talk to her. So I had to cut that down, but there's so much more to be perfectly honest with you.
The hits keep coming, right?
The hits keep
Yes.
coming. Like, why? Yeah, why? First of all, why? Hits and
I mean,
wh-
perfect.
why aren't we working off of that? Like, just, I mean, he is the lyricist, so maybe it didn't come to you, but that's it. Like, the hits keep coming.
I mean, I gotta tell you, like, I'm happily married, you're happily married, but if we were to get married, I would take your name.
Right?
Yeah,
Cool
Greg
name.
actually thought about it.
Yeah.
I did not take his, that's for sure.
What's Greg's last name? I don't even know.
It's Bauman.
Bauman. That's right.
Alvin.
It's all right.
There you
I
go.
mean,
And I
it's normal.
love him too, man. It's fun. So obviously, once again, guys, relationships matter, right? Here we go. I'm pretty sure
Mhm.
you've guessed how we all met up with Tracie, and how we've come to know her, and now we're doing business together, and it's super fun. So so excited to have you on the show. And before, I know Brent's got a bunch of questions, but before we get into
Mhm.
that, I mean, you had all this stuff going on. You got a huge background in sports, a huge background in sports. What where did the itch come up that you had to scratch for the music industry? What happened?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that kinda came out of no I mean, I love music, I always have, but my first Final Four, I worked at the NCAA on the women's Final Four, and my first one was here in Nashville. So we came down every month to try and make sure we planned the best event for our fans, and they really felt like they experienced all of Nashville when they were here, and every month I came down and I was like, "Yeah, I wanna live here." So, I worked at the NCAA, put in the time and did what I said I was gonna do, and then when the opportunity arose, I moved to Nashville and started my business, and I was started it with sports, but then I met Chancey. I started working actually at the Grand Ole Opry radio station, and I met Chancey. I booked her for an event, and I just thought she was amazing. And I just asked her, I said, "Well, what are you doing? You haven't put out much music. You don't do much on social media." And she just had a whole story about what was holding her back. And I was like, "Well, I don't have any experience in the music industry, but I know how to do marketing, and I'll help you if you want." And a lot of people are like, "I can't believe you're going to work with this lady that doesn't have any experience in music." And she said, "Well, she cares about me, and she seems to know what she's doing and other stuff." So that's how I got here. And I can almost trace every person back that I work with to Chancey. So
That's
That's
awesome.
great. And she's like a powerhouse. If you don't know Chancey Neal, you need to look that up because um, she's amazing. I mean, just an incredible artist,
Mhm.
and the writer of Harry Christmas, which was,
The
I mean,
Robertsons, the Duck Dynasty, and Luke Bryan, right?
yeah, I mean that's just awesome, right? And what's funnier is that before we started, Tracie was telling us, yeah, Chancey said when she gets her first hit song, she was going to get a tattoo of that, and then it was Harry Christmas, and she's like, I can't get
Yeah.
that. Wait for the second hit song to get the tattoo.
Right, yes.
That's so funny. So you got into that, and then you everybody you've met, you came through Chancey. How did you get in touch with Blue? And I assume Blue got you to Stefan, or vice versa.
yes, no, I ran into Blue. I'm not even sure, just in all the circles, just at the local, and we just started talking. And I was working on bringing sports and music together because I had spent so much time on that sports side. I knew how difficult it was for someone who only knows sports to try and book people. I said specifically for the NCAA, we were trying to get, we booked Jennifer Nettles for one, Pat Green, Salt and Peppa. But the amount of time I spent talking to all of their people and the contracts, I was like, man, this would be awesome if I could just hire someone that I trusted and they would just drop it into my fan fest. And so that's kind of what I've created with the Nashville Roadshow, where I go and I help my friends and just say, hey, do you guys need music, live music? Do you need something for your sponsor activations? Really just trying to make their fan fest better and having them be able to use their fan fest to sell tickets and say, this is going to be something that you're going to want to see and help with that promotion. So I was working on the Nashville Roadshow, got introduced to Blue, and just from there, it kind of just went out of control. And as we were working on things, he just kept saying, you're so organized and you kind of just see the big picture. You seem to keep everything in line. And that's when you kind of alluded to, he said, I need that in my life. And the reason that it works is
Yes,
because
yes, he does. I love you, Blue.
but it's the same thing that like you don't want to get better at a whole bunch of things so that you're mediocre. You want to be
Mhm.
really good at one thing, and that's songwriting. That's his life and his dream. And so he's spending all this time on the other things. And so he said, you know what? It makes sense for me to not do the other things. Have you
Mhm.
handle those and I can focus on songwriting. And that's kind of where it all kind of spiraled from there.
That's cool. Yeah, because with, songwriter managers, I mean, it was I went years in Nashville without ever hearing that term songwriter manager or songwriter management or have someone that manages songwriters. I mean, several years in that, and then you'd like hear a little bit. I think Scott Gunter was maybe doing a little bit, and you'd hear a little bit here and there. But then I think these days, if you haven't heard it already, you're going to be hearing more of it. Just I think as publishing deals change, as just the industry has evolved, it makes more and more sense. So I'm really kind of curious about like, okay, what would you say is and I know you work with mostly like artist writers as well. So they do both, but like in particular, like with a pure writer like Blue or one of the other people you're working with, like, okay, what is there to manage? Like, what does that look like? What is the benefit to a writer to have someone to help manage it?
And
Like,
to
what do you help
you.
with?
And the
Yeah.
benefit to you. Like, what's the reciprocal thing? I mean, what keeps you interested? I mean, you've done a lot of charity work. I can see that in your bio.
So working with
So
songwriters is charity.
I
Is
know
that
that
what
your
it
heart
is?
is big. Is this the biggest charity, or is there something coming back at you?
There are all these orphan songs that need homes.
Yes, I think in general, like my whole life, I know we kind of breezed through my sports, but I started at Northwestern University, which is, the smallest team in the Big Ten. We didn't have much success on the field. And so I've always kind of been that underdog story. I went to the
Mhm.
NCAA, which is really big, but I worked at women's basketball and they said, hey, you need to cut $2 million in your budget and also sell $4 million more in tickets. And so they weren't throwing money at me I got Salt and Peppa. I like begged, stealed, and borrowed to get them to play our show and really just finding deals. So I've always been an underdog myself. I think that so I kind of gravitate towards that. I feel like I've been lucky that I had people who made me believe that I could do whatever and it's okay to fail. And I believe that and I will try anything. But
Mhm.
I've just met a lot of people along the way that something's holding them back. And that's why in the bio, when you said you do everything, well, I really just want to do branding. But when you ask them what's getting in your way, it's, well, I don't know how to post on social, or I don't know how to make a graphic, or I don't have any good footage that I can send to get booked and all of those things. So it's really kind of just trying to get rid of any obstacles in front of their path. And for me, that's what I love. I love saying, oh my gosh, we hit one of your milestones. We did it.
Mhm.
And that's what I love. And so on Blue side specifically, just a day in the life of working with Blue is it's going through what is the to-do list and what prioritizing it. I find mostly when with anybody that on the artist side and the songwriter side, that when they see a list and it gets too long, it's like they get paralyzed and they
Mhm.
start to kind of self-sabotage. And instead of saying, you know what, I can only get one thing done today, they kind of retreat and say, I'm not going to do any, I can't. And so Blue is not like that because he's very dedicated to trying to figure out, kind of what to do. But that's where I come in and the management part is saying, okay, here's what we need to do. How do you feel about it? There's a lot of coaching, business coaching, personal coaching, and saying, how do you feel? And I can tell I had a conversation this morning and it was really exciting. And then we got to the end and I could see, I go, you're feeling overwhelmed. And he said, yeah, again, not Blue. Yes, I'm feeling overwhelmed. I said, let's go back through the list. My name is next to 9 out of the 10. You just have the one. And he's like, yes, I can do that. And so it's really a lot of just getting it and making sure what they're doing makes sense. I'm
Mhm.
really big on strategy. I hate wasting time on things that aren't kind of going back to the main idea. And so keeping them in line so they'll and again, don't judge yourself based on what other people are doing. And so they'll say, I have this idea and I want to do this. And if it fits, we do it. But if we don't, we put it in the parking lot and we come back to it. But it's really that just trying to figure out what's your goal and are we taking steps every day to get there? And on the
So,
songwriter side, yeah,
oh,
it's what is it? So no, sorry, go
I
ahead.
have
I was
an
like, the
analogy.
songwriter
I have an
side,
analogy.
yeah, go ahead.
It's writing to the hook,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Okay,
Oh,
this is our hook. We're writing this
that's what
song,
I was
right? With
thinking.
this goal here. Is everything pointing to the hook?
I'm gonna steal that,
Use
obviously.
that. You can't steal it. I'm giving it to you.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
Thank you. See you guys later.
Speak your language, okay? So, yeah, it's like, okay, you have this goal you wanna achieve. You wanted to get into the room with so and so. You wanna get this song placed here. Okay, that's our hook, right? That's the main idea. Is everything we're doing pointing toward that hook gonna get the listener to that hook, or are we in the middle of the bridge, we're writing a whole separate song? Write that
Yes,
later.
that's
So,
awesome.
yeah, that got me excited.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So talking in sports terms doesn't work with most artists, I've noticed.
And I think something else to unpack, and there's so many value bombs in there, my God, but is prioritizing. Now, this is something I suffer from, right? Like I'll get tripped up on something that um, I know I can get done right now, or I feel I can get done right
Mhm.
now, because it's not something that maybe involves deep think or something, but the deep
Mhm.
think's got to be prioritized in this particular day over the other stuff. And sometimes I'll go down that rabbit hole, and then guess what
Mhm.
happens? On the stuff that you think you can get done because it's really easy, something stupid happens. Like I have a problem with freaking Pro Tools because I'm doing just uploading the podcast, or post production of the podcast. So I've done a million times. Or I have a problem with, right now I have a problem with friggin' Outlook because I got a new computer and I can't search my emails right now. I got to
Mhm.
fix that. But it's like, so you go down these, but prioritizing is like saying, okay, this is what I have to get done, and then being able to walk away and know that, you have a long list, but it doesn't mean you have to get it all done today. It just means you gotta, it's one brick at a time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like one more brick in the wall.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Tracie.
some of that is like the management of it too is saying,
Mhm.
okay, well, in order to release your single 6 weeks out, I need the cover art or the picture to the cover art to the whatever. So then when they don't get the picture to me in time, then I say, well, now we're a day, we have to push it back. It's got to be pushed back, and understanding that it's not going to happen, and not like 2 weeks later saying, well, is my song going to come out that day? No, it's not. Like, it's not a surprise. It's everyone knows that what the reaction is to something not getting done, and it's still being okay, being like, you know what, it's just going to be a week later, and that's
Mhm.
okay.
But
Mhm.
understand, like, we're not punishing you for a week later.
You're
I think
punishing
I
yourself.
need to steal some of that because I'm like, everybody's like, "Well, but no, but this is about, the military, and I just think it would be great to drop if this would drop on Veterans Day." Well, you don't have the Masters yet, and that's a week away. But but we've already booked a party. Like, no, 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 6 weeks out, 6 weeks out. Everybody knows it's 6 weeks out, but nobody does. You know what I mean? They don't get it.
Yeah.
So, God bless you. I need some of your clients because they're like, they know it's 6 weeks out. Mine don't. Like,
They do. In
what
fact, Lexi Lou and CJ Field both dropped their singles while we were in Denmark, and we had the plan, and it was like, okay, if you don't hit this, we're not doing it in Denmark. They did it, got it done. Those two get it done.
right on.
That's
Right
awesome.
on. And I get to
So
hang out with CJ. He's friggin' awesome. I
I
love
got to
that
hang
guy.
out and write with Lexi, and she was a blast.
Yeah.
We got
They are
lost going
both
to a
awesome.
castle together. It was all kinds of fun.
That's right.
That's right.
It was the best day of wrong turns ever. There's a big group of us, and we trauma bonded. So
Is that a song title right there? The best day of wrong turns?
I don't know. It might be because it probably so I just get that
Wrong
going
turns
in the group text and have it written in like 5 minutes. But it'll be split like
with
a
the
hip
tail
hop
end of that
song.
group text. Yeah, forget
Exactly. The
about
splits will look like a hip hop song. It'd be great.
it.
Um,
Oh my
so
god.
Tracie, you and I think we bonded a little bit in Denmark over like I think the book Who Moved My Cheese. But there's another book we probably have somewhat similar bookshelves. I was imagining. Have you read The One Thing by I think it's Jay Papasan and Keller, the guy Keller Williams Realty?
Yeah.
So it's the central question of that book is what is the one thing that I can do such by doing it makes everything else easier or irrelevant? Like, what is that one thing, that lead domino that if I do that, it makes the next, you can use a small domino to knock over a slightly larger one. Next thing you know, you're knocking over a domino the size of a door, like 5 dominoes later. Like, what identify that lead domino? And it's that, multi-step thinking going, okay, here's the hook. How am I going to write to this hook? What's that lead? What's that first letter I'm going to put on the page or that first note? And so I recommend that book to anybody listening, but it's that thinking ahead going, okay, if I want to, have a number one song, what's that first lead domino? Set my alarm to get up before work so I can write or whatever. It's that sort of thing. But, you know, that planning I think is super interesting for writers. Like, what kind of stuff do writers need to plan for? Don't we just like show up and write songs and then good things magically happen? Because that's what I signed up for. I just want to write songs
Mhm.
because that's my happy place.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, I'll use Blue as an example because he is just an open book anyway, and
Mhm.
I love working with him. But he sets it when he can, for the most part, that we do business on Monday and Fridays, mostly doing whatever business stuff he needs to do. We try and keep it that. I know that there's some things going on right now, but he tries
Yeah,
to
I'm
write.
over here going, huh? Like, today's Thursday.
Yeah, I know. But he's taking a little break to get his vocal cords back together.
Yeah, that's nice.
But he normally tries to write Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, stay focused. So those are his days. And then any meetings that we try and do those on Mondays and Fridays with outside people. As you mentioned, he's the founder of Nashville Nights International Songwriters Festival. So making sure that we have those pretty kind of buttoned up. And so he can focus. Again, when you start to take your focus away, it gets one, overwhelming, and it two, gets clouded. So we
Mhm.
try and keep to that. The other part, so Blue, again, is the reason that they started this Songwriters Festival was to expose the world to songwriting and what it's like in Nashville, but also there's the hit writers and then there's the rising writers, and he treats them all the same and he wants to help them all. You just mentioned that you wrote with Lexi Lou.
Mhm.
Like, that's exactly what is amazing, is that the people who are involved will do that. Well, Blue does that a lot, and he will write with people who, I mean, I don't know if you've ever heard of him. His name is Brent Baxter. He does I've seen people not want to, they have certain people they want to write with. Blue will write with just about anybody who
Mhm.
asks and does it in the right way. And he feels that they could do something. But one of the things that when we started working together, I said, don't forget, Blue, you need to be elevated too. So we are
Mhm.
making sure that the rights that he has strategically, okay, 50% are it's because you're helping someone. Another 50% is because you're in the room with people like Brent and those hit writers, and you're making sure that you're getting back into that rotation as well. So again, it's if you want to have a cut on the radio, maybe you will get it because we're going to pitch it and it's a great song. But the other part is, but if you write with Brent Baxter, there's a better shot that's getting on the radio because the two of you came together. So some of it is just that management too, of saying, if the goal is cut on the radio, what are you doing to get there? I'm writing with Brent Baxter.
I wish
Yeah.
more people thought that way, right with me. No, uh,
I think
I
we just need to send out a mailer, Brent, like, or do like a little campaign,
the
little
campaign.
digital campaign. Like, if
It's
you wanna get on the radio, write with Brent Baxter, just respond to this.
no, what I tell people is like coaching clients, because I do some like coach writing and that sort of thing, is like this first thing to know is like writing with a hit writer is not like an easy button. It doesn't guarantee like you're going to go on the radio, because I write with a hit writer every time I write me,
Yeah.
and most of my stuff still doesn't get cut.
Yeah.
So it's like, don't
And
think
by the way,
I
same
can make
story
this
we heard
magically
from all
happen
the hit
too.
same story we heard from all the writers in Denmark,
Oh
right?
yeah, yeah, I'm
Like,
no
"Well,
different.
tell us your bruise story." Well, there's God, which
Oh,
one?
which one?
There's,
Yeah,
for the 10 hits that I have, I got 1,500 bruises,
exactly. Yeah,
it really is, it doesn't change like that, that's the
I,
truth. And
I,
I do wanna mention
mhm,
something. You said that, how Blue lifts people up, and then,
mhm,
Brent, you mentioned, Lexi Lou's an up-and-coming writer. She's a friend of Janelle's and mine as well. We just think the world of her, and, you and her wrote together with Hush, which is
mhm.
a hit Denmark artist,
Yeah.
that's a, top 10 artist in Denmark, and that happens because Blue put the Nashville Nights International Songwriting Festival together,
Oh
for
yeah.
crying out loud. Like that's so this is real, people. This is what he does,
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
and look at, there it is in living color right there,
Yeah,
and
and
that
the
was
second half of that is, Janelle was in
Mhm.
charge of the writing camp and making sure that everyone knew, and, it's a new festival, it's still just our second year, so we didn't get the communication out the way we probably should have about the right, and so some people were saying, "Well, I can't do it now and I can't come," and Lexi was like, "I'll rearrange my schedule, I will be there," and she came and she showed up and she benefited from it, but that's
Yeah.
one of the other things too is I can sleep in, I'm gonna, stay out a little bit later. I'm gonna, and which she did also, and because that's good networking, but
Mhm.
and fun. But then she's like, "But I'm gonna get up," and I said, "I'm gonna be there. I'm gonna be there." And she was so thrilled for that opportunity and how things turned out. But again, it's the showing up, it's the follow through.
I
Mhm.
agree. I mean, I was kind of in the same boat because, Johnny and I were there to do interviews and that kind of stuff, and I wasn't originally on the writer schedule to write that day, but I told Blue like, "Hey, if there's a spot open, let me know." And I know Janelle was helping kind of coordinate those and making that happen. And so I raised my hand, and some other people didn't show up. So Lexi and I got thrown in the room because we both raised our hands and we showed up like, "Oh, you can do something before noon?" Yes. It's like a songwriting superpower. I didn't realize, especially like on events like this, if
It's a
you can show
superpower.
up before noon and be reliable, you are a solution, not a problem. And so we
Yeah,
showed
that's
up,
right.
Lexi and I showed up as solutions, and what happens is the Zig Ziglar thing. You help enough other people get what you want, you get what you want. So we were helping Janelle's job get easier, Blue's job getting easier. And Hush, they're professionals. They showed up, they were there. And we showed up, we wrote a song that, we'll see what happens with it, but the artists in the room that day were digging it. So we'll see.
Yeah.
But that's my new mantra is show up as a solution, not a problem.
I love that. I
The
love
more you
it.
can do that, just the more they're gonna call you
That's a
because
freaking
you show
T-shirt.
up. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's when I first started working on the music side, that I was at the Grand Ole Opry radio station and got to meet some people, and people would say, "Oh, well, I'm having a show at the Wild Horse, or I have a show at the Basement East, and at the Basement wherever." And Greg and I would be like, "Cool, fun," and we would go.
Mhm.
And the first couple of months, people are like, "Oh, you guys showed up." We're like, "Well, we said we were coming." They're like, "Yeah, we put a lot of people on this list," or a lot of people said they were coming and they're not here. And we get it every once in a while still where they're like, "Oh, you're here." And I'm like, "Well, we said we were going to be here." So I think that people kind of just be honest. Like, if I can't come, I'm not going to tell you I'm going to be there.
Yeah.
But it's making good on the promise and then actually showing up if you say that you do. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
Well, that kind of leads me to think about what are some of the gaps that you see with, like, with writers, not necessarily ones you work with, and maybe ones you work with, or ones that you're trying to get your people to work with on the other side of the table. What are some gaps that you see, some ways that songwriters are either self-sabotaging? You when you said that, they'll talk about something that's holding them back. My first thought is, oh, how much of that is just in their head? How much of that is just an excuse versus like an actual, here's a technical thing we got to figure out. And actually, once we figure it out, that's all that's in the way, is actually an external thing versus like, oh, no, that's really just an internal thing. That's a mental block you have. That's not, it's real, but it ain't real.
Yes, and my background is business
Mhm.
and this and go and to do and check it off. Sometimes if I do something that wasn't on my list, I write it down just so I can check it off.
Oh, me
I
too.
lo I love lists. I love getting all that stuff done. So when I get on a call or we're doing a meeting, it's like it used to be, hey, this is the agenda, or how was your weekend? Cool. We flip through it and then we go. And I'm finding with artists and songwriters that you need to take that 5 or 10 minutes and really find out, how is your day? I'm not just asking you, because a lot of that is something that has happened the day before is still festering in their head, and they just need to talk it out, get through it, and move on. So
Mhm.
sometimes it could be something completely unrelated to songwriting, but that's what's keeping them from actually moving forward. So again, meeting people where they feel comfortable, listening to the energy from a phone call go from here down to here,
Mhm.
and knowing, okay, you're feeling overwhelmed. And again, I'm a sensitive person, but not really. So it's been like a learned thing over the last 3 years where I'm starting to hear it and feel it. And so those are the things where now they can tell me like what actually is holding them back. Sometimes they just say, well, I have writer's block, because they just don't really want to tell you, because I'm going to be like, well, just get over it. Because I'm not, this is not my, music is not my background. In
Right.
sports, you throw dirt on it and you get back up. And
Yeah.
so for here,
Nobody has like catcher, like quarterback block. Well, you block for the quarterback. No, I just can't throw a ball today. I mean, you have some days you're off, but it's not like it doesn't come off my hands. I don't
Yeah.
yeah,
know.
yeah.
Like
Get out
stuck,
there.
stuck, like
It's stuck
like a
to
Yeah.
my
booger.
fingers. It won't, not a thing.
No, so that's what I'm used to, like, just get back up. I know you're limping, get back up, let's go.
Mhm.
Walk
So
it
I've
off,
been
walk it off.
learning how to kind of, like I said, meet them where they are, talk through whatever it needs to be done. But a lot of that is just other things that are happening in their lives. And then, like I said, they get really caught up in, and that was a phone call today. Well, someone else is doing this. I'm like,
Mhm.
awesome. I spend a lot of time just writing back, "Why?" question mark. And
Mhm.
not in a mean way, but in like, just explain it to me. And if it's a good idea, I'm good. I don't see it connecting right now. Let's talk it through. And a lot of times it is a good idea, but we have to find out how it goes. But a lot of times they'll say, so and so is doing this. And I'm like, well, that doesn't really fit with what you're trying to do right now, maybe down the line. So a lot of that is just getting in their own head because they see someone else doing something.
Yeah.
There is a lot more strategy and business stuff that goes on in a writer's world than what a lot of writers realize. And a lot of
Mhm.
aspiring writers realize, what? I thought, just again, get in the room, write a song, and then magic happens, and then magic happens outside the room for it to get to the right people and whatever. And that's not the
Mhm.
case. Unless you're the luckiest mofo on the planet.
Right,
It's
and then
not
the
the
follow
case.
through, yeah, like, we have like I said, Blue has written, I mean, what do you think, 2,500 songs or something like that?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so, being able to, we've been cataloging, really going back and saying, "Which are your favorite songs?" And a lot of times, because he does write with these known writers, the songs get pitched with from their people, and
Yeah.
that's great, but there's no reason that we can't also start pitching these songs. So that's something we've been working on as well, is just saying, "Okay," because before it's like, "I wrote these songs and no one's cutting them." Well, did you pitch them to
Mhm.
anybody? I mean,
Uh,
no. So that's what we're, again, and Blues have been, I'm not saying Blue because his have been pitched, but we're just taking that extra step and saying, you know what, we're also going to pitch it. We're also going to talk to people that we know. We're going to start building those relationships and trying to do that. But for the people who write the songs and they're like, man, I can't believe I'm not on the radio. And I ask, did you pitch a song this week? Last week? And they didn't. And so it really is, again, just going back and saying, what are you trying to do? And are you taking the steps to get there? But that's a
Mhm.
lot of the, like I said, the self sabotage is that someone else is going to do it, or I'm going to be at a writer's round, they're going to hear it. And maybe they will. But
That's a
really, the
terrible
grind is,
strategy. Hope
Yeah.
is not a strategy, right?
Oh,
Hope
you
is
sound
not a
like
business
Greg.
strategy. That's it. Hope
Yeah.
is not a business strategy. And you know what? You are gonna get some of those, but that has to be the icing on the cake.
Yeah.
That has to be that can't be the cake, man. And so, to love on Blue here, when we started working with Josh Roy, Janelle brought Josh Roy to me because the Dennis and Diana were friends of Diana specifically was friends of Janelle's because they grew up together in Arizona. And hey, I got this artist. I just heard him at this party. Like, you really need to hear him. Like, I think he's really good. And I'm like, okay, and I heard him sing the national anthem because that's what he sang at this party. And I was like, well, he can sing. Then we got to find out, if he's got the guts, if he's got the character, if he's got the chutzpah to really. Does he really want to be an artist, or does he also tomorrow might want to be a fireman and then an astronaut? I don't know. But then we bring him out. Once I know that he's like, I like him and I like his character, I like the guy. I really think that he's a storm the island and burn the ships kind of guy, which is what you have to be an artist, in my opinion. Um, then I bring him to Blue, and Blue's like, "You're working with him?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Hell yes." And but I'm gonna run point, I'm like, okay, and I'm gonna get the writers in there, and then we kind of. So here's how all this stuff, just to give you an idea how this works. It's kind of like it's on the fly, but it's everybody doing their job and having a good time with it, So uh, Josh Roy's manager is a former celebrity chef. Okay, he's had a couple shows on the Food Network. He's got this big killer house down in Nashville with a great spread, and it is like
You mean Scottsdale?
yeah, in Scotts. Well, no, it's not in Scottsdale. It's in Gilbert, Arizona,
Okay.
but it's like a little south of Scottsdale. But and of course his kitchen's like amazing. And I'm like, you know what? We can do the normal thing, which would be to bring Josh up repeatedly from Arizona to Nashville to try to get in these writers' rooms. But you know what would be more fun and more interesting would be to call it a writers' retreat and let's fly the writers down. And in this case, which is weird, usually you want to bring Muhammad to the mountain and not the mountain to Muhammad because that's a
Right.
lot more work. But this case, I'm like, let's bring the mountain to Muhammad. Let's get them down there. Dennis, you big time them with the dishes and just cook the fire out of everybody and just blow them away on this weekend. And we'll get a whole weekend of writing with this artist and we'll get focus, which then turned into Blue going, hey, man, do you think like while we're down there, we could play a couple gigs? Like we could do the Nashville Nights thing like in Arizona. You know what I mean? And I'm like, well, I don't see why we couldn't because here we've got Dennis and Josh who have all these relationships with these clubs that they play. And sure as shooting, we've got all of a sudden, boom, 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 boom. We've got a couple gigs. We're on the morning news show and all that stuff because Josh already has a relationship there. And now we've started the first American market for the Nashville Nights Music Festival, and we're working on that. But here's Blue giving first, man. You know what I mean? Like working his butt off and grinding to write those songs with my artist, and now we're opening up a new market there. So it just all kind of it's that kind of a thing, man. It's just that kind of like a let's just get it done, and everybody's there for a reason, and it all fits, So.
Mhm.
Yeah, and it's
So
okay to do things differently. Like I said, when I first started, people were like, "Chancey, who is this woman? She doesn't know anybody." And she's like,
and
"She doesn't know anybody, but she knows things."
Yeah.
So it's just kind of doing that. And I think one of the other tips, like you mentioned, that you bring the writers to them and have a retreat, but also at the songwriters events. That if your one of your strategies is that Miranda Lambert is going to come in and listen to your song, which I know it has happened before. She's going to come to writers round. She's going to hear a song. She's going to want that song. Then every writers round, you should be as buttoned up and as professional as possible. So,
Mhm.
and I love to hear a song you wrote the day before. I just was at an event last night where we wrote this 2 days ago. We've never played it out, which is totally fine. But if one of your strategies is, I'm going to have someone hear this and want my song, then it needs to be polished. It needs to be ready to go. It needs the best you ever sang it. So I know
Mhm.
I go to a ton of writers rounds and, they're taking shots and, which one am I going to do? What should I do? And I feel
Yeah.
like it should be a performance that you have been thinking about for the last 2 days, even if you're not getting paid for the writers round,
Mhm.
that it's very serious and that you're ready to go. If that is one of your strategies is to be heard.
yes,
And yes, and I would back that up a step and say, okay, what rounds has Miranda attended? What venues? Who does she go out to hear? Who are her buddies? How do I get in that round or a round adjacent to it where she shows up a little earlier, staying late to drink and whatever. I'm in one of those rounds. Okay, how do we figure that out? And who are those people in those rounds? And who are those venues? And how do I work that out? Had a really interesting conversation with my brother-in-law. And this is before we were family. We were roommates, and he'd go play out around and stuff. He's a
That's a
writer as
sort of
well.
story, Tracie. I know you're asking a question
His
in your
sister
head.
came to visit, and I'm like, "How you doing?" And how's school?
I just saw her just like think for a second. I'm like, yeah, that's
yeah, that's how it happens.
that's a whole nother Oprah.
I was letting it roll.
Thing.
I was letting it roll.
Anyway, so I didn't. Anyway, so he'd play rounds, and and we figured out one night that he would put like 10 hours. It seemed like into one round, 3-song round, because we lived out in Laverne, so that's a drive time coming and going. You have all the practice time because he'd work up the songs he wanted to play, so there's practice till he feels comfortable with that. There's getting there early, there's the 30 minutes or whatever, his round, 3 songs, then they're staying afterwards to be a good supporter of that round and everything that had you out. Next 10 hours, and it's like, and what are you hoping to get from that? Well, meet somebody hears a song. I'm like, how many of those 10-hour blocks are you having to put together before something maybe happens? I'm like, dude, because he did sales before that. I'm like, you're in sales. You can get a song to so-and-so in like 5 hours. Or you can get in front of them if you put 5 hours of dedicated work into it. That's half the time on one of those rounds. And you may be doing 100 hours to bump into somebody. It's like, I'm not saying don't do that, but I'm just saying, let's do the math.
There's a different way.
There may be a different way. If your goal is I want to get a song or me in front of somebody, and that's why you're doing that, I bet there's a more efficient way of doing it. And I think a lot of writers we get sucked into doing what we do. I write, I do rounds. Is there another way to skin this cat?
Yes, yeah, and side note, hold on, let me just add to that real quick, because you mentioned something very important, Tracie. Like, you're talking about button up the show, like it should be a performance. And so when I was telling you about like Josh Roy, when I went out to Arizona last week, we worked on the performance, right, to create moments. And it just occurred to me, like, if you're not sure what song you're going to sing, or if you're singing a song you just wrote last night and you haven't mastered it, or you don't have the kind of vocal prowess where you can just lay that down and sell the fire out of that lyric, which a lot of writers don't. I certainly didn't. I clawed my way to middle management and vocals. I know that about myself. But then what is the moment? The moment is the part that you forget. The moment is you hemming and hawing over which song to sing, and you just look like you don't know what the hell you're doing. That becomes the moment that stands out. And it is a live performance, and live performances are consumed almost 60% visually. Even on a writer's round, it's more about the visual than it is about the song. Like, let that sink in for a second. You know what I mean? Let that sink in. And so if you're overwhelmingly, shitting the bed on stage and you've got the world's greatest song, what are they going to remember? I don't know.
Skid marks.
Skid marks is what they're going to remember. That's right. That's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. So
yes, and Lexi Lou again is a good example of that. She released her first ever single on Spotify, and back in February, it was called Ghost Town. She wrote it with Carvin Walls, and we were getting ready. She was able to do like the hour slot before the Freak Show. Terry Joe was able to let her do that. It was awesome. And I said, okay, well, what are you going to do? And she's like, well, I'm just going to sing a couple songs and then I'll sing Ghost Town. And I was like, which songs are you going to sing? And so I was like, make this an event, a presentation. And so I said, the songs kind of have to tie together somehow, tell the story so that when you get to that one. And I said, and like you mentioned, the visual part, she started out with just like a black outfit on. And then the next song she put a cape on. And then the last song she put her Ghost Town Mardi Gras, because it's about New Orleans, her Mardi Gras glasses on, and she crushed it. And like she built it up and made a performance out of it, and just instead of saying, hey, here's 3 songs I wrote and here's one that's on Spotify now.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, and I think too many people do that,
Mm-hmm. I think the hard thing is to stop and think. I mean, we'll think all day on a song and what chord comes next or what word goes next, but it's the other thinking. So you mentioned, I'm going to dive into a little bit more. You mentioned like kind of the follow-up, that's a place where writers often fall down. I want to get a cut. Well, I wrote it, but I didn't follow up by pitching it. We had a thrilling conversation in Denmark about email. It's thrilling. and how that could be a challenge for some young creatives. I mean, are there some like generation gaps or culture gaps that you see that creatives need to fill if they're not going to leave money and opportunity on the table? And we talked about email, so maybe that might be a good place to start, but where there are just gaps, just people are just missing out.
Yes.
You can
So
vent. This is the
yeah,
time to vent. This is a safe space.
I
Yeah,
know.
there
I
you go.
love you.
This is a
I
trust
love
tree. This is a trust tree.
Nobody's going to hear this.
Just
It's
between
fine.
us. Yeah.
I think anyone who's ever met me knows that I love email. Um, so I mean, it really is, again, that is it a hobby or is this a business? Because everybody that books, not everybody, but a lot of people who book in Nashville, maybe down the honky tonks, it's a group text. I need to fill a spot tomorrow at 4. Who can do it? And that's efficient. And I get that. But if you want to be booked by festivals and casinos and sporting events, the people that my friends and I reach out to, I was messaging with the Titans today. I'm not texting that guy. I am emailing him links and a proposal and just all the words, because when he is searching for game day entertainment, he's not going to his text messages, he's going to his emails. And I've had multiple times, even some venues here in Nashville and in Tampa, where I've sent an email and just, said my words, and they wrote back and said, this was a very professional email. I didn't even listen to your artist, but I'm booking them. So sometimes it's just that they're looking for that professionalism and remembering that. So if you got booked for a bigger show, that person probably books other shows. So when you're taking a week, 2 weeks to tell them how many meals you need, what time your sound check is, what you need for production, you have lessened your chances that person's going to reach out again, because they do not want to work with someone who is making their job harder. That was the whole premise of Nashville Roadshow: make their job easier. PBR, when I reached out to my friends there, they said, so you're just going to do Saturday and I just need to show up. And I said, yes. And all day Saturday, they just kept saying, I didn't even do anything for this. This is done. And I didn't do anything. They literally did nothing. And they were so thankful. So when you make someone else's job harder by texting, by not responding to email, then you're making it easier for someone else, like my clients, to be able to jump in and take those spots. Because again, not all of them want to email. And sometimes I do send a text and say, just emailed you. But when I email, I usually have copied 3 or 4 team members on there. So being able to have everyone in the loop and know what's going on. If you don't email, you probably are not on my roster.
There you go. Look at that.
You can't just send a Snapchat? What?
Smoke signals, they don't work?
Smoke signals, right, yeah.
A TikTok DM? No?
Yes. And I know some people that one of the things that kind of holds them back is, that's the generation where they didn't really do email. They don't feel comfortable. Some of them, didn't go to college. So they're like, well, I don't even know how to craft the perfect email. And that's one of those self-sabotage where they're like, well, they know all these people. I said, I will write the email for you and you can just send it on. And so again, finding the obstacle, getting around it, go ahead and just, change it if you want a little so it sounds more like you. But at the same point, if you're not emailing because you don't think you're doing it right, then we'll fix that. But
so is that a gap that you see? A lot of people have more opportunity at their fingertips, but they don't ask.
They don't ask. And we talked about follow-up too, where you said, well, I emailed that person once and I didn't hear back. And it's like, okay, well, maybe one more email, or find out, do a little bit of research. I mean, people are posting everything on social media. Oh, that person's at the ACM Awards. We probably shouldn't have emailed at that time. Maybe we should have done it the next time. Or again, provide value in your emails. I think that was the part that when I email people, they find value or that it's genuine, because I have noticed something they're doing. I'm not wasting their time. I'm giving them something because I know that this could be a good fit. And that's when you get the responses. So spending a little bit of time on that research and not just blindly like making a copy and paste. I want to play your venue. I want to play your venue. Being able to say, oh, these people do this. Let's mention that in the email. And then they're like, oh, they know this venue. We want to be there. So spending a little bit of time on research and genuineness and personalization is helpful.
That's cool. So I'm curious, there's a little bit of a sidebar. So you've done a lot of charity work, but certainly this is not charity work. Like without, going into any details or whatever that are, private, but like with artist managers, like what's in it for them, or writer managers? Like artist managers, that generally like 10% of whatever, that kind of stuff. They take a cut. Are writer managers kind of the same way, where it's like is percentage based, or is it retainer? And have you seen? Do you know other writer managers, or are you kind of like, I do my own thing, and I know they're out there, but we don't really,
There are a couple that we've stumbled upon, Blue
Mm-hmm.
and I. So that's been good to see that we're not out there alone. But I think for me, I do charge a monthly retainer, which is like not a lot because
Mm-hmm.
that's the group of people I've decided to work with because I want to help them. So, but because if I was just doing management, then yeah, there'd probably be some sort of percentage, but I'm doing their social media, I'm building their websites, I'm doing their videos, I'm making their reels, I'm doing all of that other stuff. So that's kind of what they're paying us for.
Mm-hmm.
And then the management just kind of comes along with it. Again, I do this because I want to help. And so I don't have any, 10%. If this song goes number one, I get 10% of your earnings. I don't do that. I feel like I didn't write the song. And if I was helpful in getting it placed and cut and on the radio, that's great. But I didn't work any harder than I would have normally. So for me to take an escalated amount in my mind doesn't work for me.
Right.
So I just do my monthly retainer. And if Blue makes $1 million, he makes $1 million.
He
And
can pay you for a lot longer time.
yeah, exactly. Then we'll be there forever. And again, if he wants to buy me like a car or something, no. But like that's my way. I know everyone does
Mhm.
do like the 10%, but I feel like what they're paying me for is the branding and not the management.
So how do
Yeah.
you brand a songwriter? What kind of songwriter branding is there? Artist thing that makes perfect sense. And Johnny and I have talked about this. Longtime climbers probably heard about this. Like, part of my brand is lyricist. Like I have like you talked about it earlier, and that resonated with me. Like you can work really hard to be mediocre at a bunch of things, but you really need some sort of superpower for the phone to ring. And that's how I've looked at my creative strengths and weaknesses. Like I'm going to go all in on this thing. So hopefully people go, when you think of, I need lyrics or song titles or this idea thought out, I think of Brent. So my phone rings. Um, but in what other ways do you brand a songwriter like a Blue or somebody that's not, doing the artist thing as well?
Well, the first thing, so working on the Denmark festival
Mm-hmm.
last year, especially, we had all these hit songwriters, and I was like, oh, this is perfect. We'll just tell everybody all the songs they wrote. And it took us a long time to track down the songs that were number ones, the top tens, and really to be able to say, this is what this person did, because most songwriters do not have a really great either website or Wikipedia page. Just something. If you just Google their name, you would think this is everything I've done. And some
Mm-hmm.
people have it. A lot of people do not. So one of the things is just creating those materials that they need for people to say, if I'm going to say, hey, here's a songwriters round and these are the three people in it, that when they click that button, when I say Blue Foley, they see, oh, he wrote with Ashley McBride. He's got a Dove Award. He has over 100 cuts. His song's been played on the Opry. Like that's easy to find and market them. So being able to just have those materials is good. And then on the social media side, which we're still working on Blue, to really again figure out what it is, because he's not just a songwriter, he's an entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
And so being able to say, okay, this is how we want to do this. We're gonna get him on TikTok here soon. And but really making sure we have all of the content together so that it tells a cohesive story. And that's one of the things that a lot of times, and you've probably seen it, where they're super excited, they get in the studio, they take a picture, new music coming, and then 4 weeks later, buy my music. And it's like, whoa, what happened
Right.
in
Yeah.
between there? And so really stepping back and saying, engaging the people in the process, asking them questions instead of just saying, this song, I sang it, you should listen to it. Like
Mm-hmm.
really being able to say, what is that process and why should you care against that why? And why
Yeah.
should they care that you put a song out? And that's part of the branding, is just really authentically telling the story. So like when people, if I say, oh, I work with Blue Foley, I mean, you guys kind of did it. We're like, we love it. Like,
Yeah.
so bottle that. And how do you put that on social media so that people see what a kind and caring, talented person he is? And
Mm-hmm.
that's really what the branding is just being your authentic self, but telling it in a way that people aren't like, whoa, what just happened? Because that's all the time. I'm like, like someone just had a baby. And I was like, I didn't even know you were dating anybody. Like,
Right.
so just making sure that we're not just surprised all the time, because a
Mhm.
good surprise ending is good, but you've built the story up all the way through. And I was talking this morning to a client and they were like, but what I'm doing isn't always interesting. And I was like, that's what a book is. It's building a character until you get interesting
Mhm.
and they're invested in it. And it's the highs and the lows. You can't just, so Lexi's a good example where she hates TikTok. She hates all social media. So I made her get on TikTok. And like her most viewed TikTok before we started working together, she had said, I just entered this song in a songwriters contest. What do you think? And got a ton of views, even though she didn't really have any followers. And then you never heard about it again. And I said, well, what
Mhm.
happened to that song? She goes, oh, I didn't win. And I was like, well, you need to tell people that. And she's like, well, I don't want to tell people that.
Yeah, that's not
I
yeah.
said, I get it. But like, then they start cheering for you for the next one because you're like, oh, our hero, had a moment. But now they're kind of
That's
get
right.
and kind of
Mhm.
keep following.
That's right.
That's
That's
cool.
right. And quick question: do you factor in at all, like, because historically songwriters haven't been front and center, right? They're not the B2C thing, right? It's B2B, and
Mhm.
so do you? How much weight do you put on, and do you incorporate like brand archetypes into that, like with certain stuff? And what's
Yes.
blues brand archetype?
That is a good question. So like I said, for him, we're still working on our strategy, but what he said to me a few months ago was just like, if you're listening with friends or you're sitting around a campfire and you're playing a song and whoever happens to be there, then they're like, oh, I want to cut that song or I love that song. So what we're trying to do is we're starting a playlist a lot. And you probably have seen some people, songs you didn't know that I wrote, that's been going around.
Hmm.
And
Mhm.
Blue has those. But there's also people who are right now, like I think Kyle Houlihan just released a song that Blue wrote on. And every songwriter's round I go to, regardless if he's there or not, someone sings a Blue Foley song. So really trying to bottle that up and say, here are some songs and putting them on his social media. Like I said, TikTok, that's going to be big for us where he's doing just like some quick acoustics of new songs, old songs, songs you didn't know. And then his friends are the ones that are following him and they might hear a song because his friends are looking for songs. So that's part of his brand and part of our marketing is just getting more of his songs out there because if he didn't write another song, he'd be fine. Like he has so many that really are amazing, and they say that the average life of a song on the radio now is 7 years. So,
Hmm.
I mean, just going back into his archive and picking out those is what we've been doing, and sending them out and seeing what people think. But that's the biggest thing is just if you want people to hear your music, a lot of people I know get worried that someone's going to steal the hook or the melody or whatever, and you don't want to put that out there. But for him, it's writing songs is his life. So we need to be. I mean, if you go back to his social media as it is now, it's him championing everybody,
Hmm.
and it's like we need to
Okay.
champion you too. We need to mix that in there. So that's what we're working on for him.
Very
Right
cool.
on. Well, we will continue to help with that too.
Oh, I know. There's no bigger cheerleader than Janelle.
I know, right? It's true.
Yeah.
That's my baby. Yeah. Well, man, that's awesome. I mean, that is really enlightening, and I think a lot of you should let's champion you. Like, you should probably put a book out or something or a course out that describes what you do to teach people how to do this
Mhm.
for themselves or how other people who like love their favorite songwriter uh, can help that songwriter. You know what I mean? And help organize them and help them become more productive. We certainly do a lot of that with Josh, and our other artists, right? That we're like, okay, so this is what we do for a show. This is how we behave in a writing session and stuff, and just show them the ropes essentially, but also keep it productive, and
Mhm.
what's the highest and best use of your time right now, and how are we going to do that? So, man, thank you for coming on. I think that's amazing. Where can people get a hold of you? You got
Yes.
something you want to plug right now? Like, what can we do to help you?
Yes. Well, just I mean, Hits and Branding, that's my website. Like you said, HITZ. It works well for sports and for music. So they can find me there. All my links are there. If you follow me on anywhere, it's just Tracie Hits. I'm the only one in the world, I think.
Okay. Well, and we'll have all those links are on the will be in the show notes, guys. So you can just go and hit them right there. And of course, Blue Foley and Nashville Nights, follow that. Keep track of that.
Mhm.
And if you're out in Arizona, come out and see us at the end of October. Because when is this going to drop? Way after that, isn't it?
No, no, this is actually supposed to drop
Tuesday?
on Tuesday, the October 18th.
Oh yeah. So
It's
hey,
coming quick.
if you're out in Arizona, we will at the end of the month. We're going to be out there at Boondocks in at Harold's up in Cave Creek. And there's a special house party that if you know about it, you know, and if you don't, you don't.
And if I see you, you're probably, if you see me, you can come see me at my office or my house, and I'll be like, "What are you doing here? Get out."
Right
That's
on.
my
Well,
life.
thank you, Tracie, so much. That brings us to the end of another Killer Climb episode, guys. Listen, this is what it's all about, you guys. Like, we're trying to help you get your head right. This podcast exists because we want you to win, so keep on climbing.
And we'll see you at the top.